This is CBC Vancouver News.
No accommodations were available. It was just a nightmare.
Hundreds of people going to and from Bowen Island this long weekend found themselves stranded after multiple ferry cancellations, and they say it's not the first time. The Stanley Park bike lane debate heats up once again as the city begins removing the temporary lane surrounding the seawall.
That's our way of sharing our culture, I guess, through the soups and what we make.
And we continue our coverage of Asian Heritage Month with a visit to a well-known restaurant in Nanaimo. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Janella Hamilton. It's been a frustrating May-long weekend for people traveling to and from Bowen Island after multiple ferry sailings were canceled due to staffing issues. As Moira Whiten reports, hundreds of people were stranded overnight with nowhere to sleep, and local residents say it's not a new problem. Ferry service has been unreliable for months.
What should have been a carefree start to the long weekend turned into utter chaos for some on Bowen Island. Multiple canceled ferry sailings forced some travelers to sleep in their cars or abandon them altogether to take a water taxi to the mainland. Others waiting it out, sleeping on couches and in hallways of strangers' homes and at local businesses.
No accommodations were available. It was just a nightmare.
In a statement, BC Ferries apologizes and says the cancellations were due to staffing shortages. But the mayor of Bowen Island, Andrew Leonard, says BC Ferries should have ensured there was enough crew well before adding additional sailings for the long weekend. He says it is difficult to believe the company couldn't have predicted staffing shortages and at the very least should have warned passengers.
BC Ferries put out a release earlier on the weekend boasting about increased ferry service on some of the major routes to Nanaimo and to Victoria, and yet our route on Bowen Island was the only one that was left canceled.
Some Bowen Island residents say increasing ferry disruptions make it impossible to work, study, or access medical care on the mainland.
Really scared to go back to work and have to deal with these ferry issues and how it's going to impact my employment and being able to make a income. I think the ferry needs to be treated as an essential service, and I don't really think it is right now.
Some expressing their concerns over a proposed campsite on the island, afraid it will increase demand for an already unreliable service. One resident is even planning to move her family to West Vancouver to avoid future ferry issues that she says often make her husband late for work.
Said it's fine if it's once in a while, but when it's becoming a practice that BC Ferries is constantly canceling our sailings, or showing up late, it's too much of a burden on us as a family.
Those who opened their doors to stranded passengers this weekend say they are happy to help out, but that it is up to BC Ferries to find a long-term solution.
We're sick and tired of it.
Ferry service to Bowen Island was back to normal Sunday, but some travelers worry they may be left in the lurch once again. Moira Whiten, CBC News, Vancouver.
The Vancouver Park Board has begun the preliminary work to remove the temporary bike lane at Stanley Park, while the board voted to get rid of the bike lane back in February. As Michelle Gomez reports, the heavily divisive debate about park access continues to get heated.
At 73 years old, Mary Sherlock loves staying active on her bike. She does not want to see the bike lane go.
And I came here for a ride, and it was absolutely glorious.
The temporary bike lane was created in 2020 to allow for more physical distancing on the surrounding seawall. But in February, the Vancouver Park Board voted to remove it, allowing more room for vehicles in the park.
And I said to myself, surely now that we've had a taste of what Stanley Park could be, we will never go back to having a park filled with cars.
I think it's a good idea to have a temporary bike lane or a bike lane at all, because Stanley Park is such a well-known and beloved recreational space.
Overnight Friday, city staff began removing the concrete barriers that separate the bike lane from cars. Some residents expressed concerns about safety.
With removing the bike lane here, we're gonna see an increase in speed. Obviously, like you can see the cars just trying to get around even other cars in the single lane now. So that's only gonna get worse. So that safety is just completely gone.
In a statement to CBC News, the Park Board says traffic flow in the park will return to pre-pandemic levels with added safety measures, but they did not specify what those measures will be. Rhiannon Fox feels unsafe taking her kids cycling alongside moving cars.
I really feel as though we're losing a refuge, and I feel as though the city doesn't care about people like us.
A group of cyclists plan to ride through the park every Sunday to protest the bike lane removal. But the extra road space is welcome news for some. A coalition of 14 local businesses called the Stanley Park Stakeholders say limiting vehicle access has devastated their livelihoods.
They were all not just slightly affected, they were absolutely decimated. The amount of parking that was taken away unnecessarily was brutal. There was nowhere to park a tour bus. These guys used to have tour buses by the dozen arriving every week.
It's been a two-lane park forever. I mean, they changed it for COVID, so let's just get it back to what it was before.
The Park Board says staff are looking into creating a permanent dedicated bike lane through the park, a decision to be made by November. Michelle Gomez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Crews are continuing to fight a number of major wildfires in the Peace River region close to Fort St. John. Firefighters say changing wind directions and cooler weather has helped temper flames. On Saturday, crews were able to prevent the spread of the Stoddart Creek blaze, which remains burning out of control. And with rain in the forecast, there is a glimmer of hope.
Stoddart, the larger one, we're expecting to receive some precipitation starting tonight, and it could be some potentially significant precipitation. If we do receive that, that's going to really speed up suppression efforts on all fires, but specifically the larger fire.
Officials say they don't expect any changes to evacuation orders or alerts this weekend. In the interior, a new out-of-control wildfire sparked an evacuation order for a handful of properties near Quesnel. The province says since April 1st, more than 200 wildfires have burned in BC, largely within the Prince George Fire Centre, and 85% were human-caused and preventable. This weekend, a meeting was held in Lytton to discuss what steps need to be taken to ensure residents can return home to a more fire-resilient community. In 2021, an out-of-control wildfire swept through the village, burning 90% of buildings and homes, and reconstruction has yet to start. The mayor of Lytton says despite the frustration over the slow pace of reconstruction, people want to look to the future.
Right after the fire, we heard from Premier Horgan at the time and other politicians that Lytton was going to be a city that the world, or a community the world would look to. It's going to be a model community for net zero, for fire resistancy. The people of the village, and I believe I can speak for them, don't want that to be the message. What they want is they want to live in safe homes they can afford, that are good for them, good for the village.
About 50 people took part in the discussions, including representatives of neighboring First Nations, the city of Kamloops, and also the federal government. Preliminary data from the BC Coroner Service shows 2023 is shaping up to be one of the most fatal years for drug toxicity deaths in Nanaimo, with residents dying at over twice the provincial rate. In the first 4 months of this year, 45 people in that city lost their lives to drug toxicity, compared to 74 people in all of 2022. Vancouver, Surrey, and Greater Victoria are the townships experiencing the highest number of deaths this year. However, Nanaimo has a much smaller population. For every 100,000 people, nearly 106 have died. That's over double the provincial rate of 45.2. Across the province, a total of 206 people died in April. That's a 17% increase from this time last year. CBC's chief political correspondent, Rosemary Barton, spoke to BC's chief coroner, Lisa Lapointe, about why safe supply programs are needed.
I think we need to recognize that the driver of this crisis in British Columbia has been and continues to be toxic fentanyl in the illicit drug supply. Safer supply is designed as a means to separate people from the toxic drug supply. It is available to some folks in some areas of our province. It's not widely available, but I also think it's really important to recognize that safer supply is one of the options or one of the tools being used to separate people from the toxic drug supply, but also treatment and recovery, prescribed treatment, recovery centers, residential treatment. All of those are means to keep people alive.
All numbers from the BC Coroner Service are considered preliminary and they may be adjusted upon further investigation. To Comox now, where a driver is lucky to be alive after a car they were driving hit a gas pump, causing a local Esso station to go up in flames. First responders believe the driver lost control, hitting the accelerator instead of the brake. This video was taken just after it happened. You can see the gas station employee and a passerby pulling a woman from the vehicle seconds before the entire station exploded in flames. Dozens of firefighters from Comox, Courtenay, and Cumberland battled the fire. Residents in nearby apartments were evacuated as a precaution. Only minor injuries have been reported, including to the female driver. From mountain burgers to award-winning wonton soup, Mrs. Rich's has been a well-known diner in Nanaimo for more than 30 years. In recognition of Asian Heritage Month, Claire Palmer popped by for a visit to learn more about the history of the Wong family who owns the restaurant and have been sharing their heritage and culture with Vancouver Island residents for generations.
Well, heritage is directly connected to food. Anyone can enjoy it and share it and hopefully have a really positive memory of it. That's our way of sharing our culture, I guess, through the soups and what we make.
My grandfather came over to North America and he eventually moved up to BC and settled in Nanaimo. And he came back knowing the needs of the people in Chinatown, Nanaimo, needed to have some medical care. And so that's what he did. He opened Get Well Soon drugstore. So he wanted to relieve their pain and get them healthier. He was also an entrepreneur. He had 2 restaurants, not at the same time, in Chinatown, the Canton restaurant.
Our father started a restaurant back in the day, 1956. It opened up, the Diners Rendezvous. And the restaurant was super busy. They had over 200 people as staff members. That's how busy it was. It was definitely the biggest in town, if not the island.
And I designed it so that it represents our family in this restaurant. So we all love cars. I remember being when I was like 7 or 8 years old, probably 7, watching the Chinatown burn down. Uncle Chuck had written his memoirs, and I found out that he had driven somewhere, and when he came back he saw that somebody had lit some area around the fencing, and the fencing caught fire. And he went around and he said he kicked in all the doors trying to save everybody. I see more people from different cultures are here, which is kind of interesting too, and I think we belong together. We make our society a better place.
A lot would be euthanized.
How anti-anxiety medication is helping make rescued cats more adoptable. That story is next. It's being called a game changer for cats rescued from hoarding situations. Marie Zeidler has more on research out of the University of British Columbia, helping to rehabilitate feral cats set to be euthanized.
Want your tummy rubbed?
Meet Lumi. Lumi is 8 years old and likes playing with her toys, looking out the window, and of course, getting lots of pets.
She was really sweet. The minute I got her in here, she sort of been very curious from day one. After a day and she started grooming and cleaning herself, I knew that she felt like she was at home.
But Lumi wasn't always so lucky. 2 years ago, she was rescued from a hoarding environment along with more than 30 other cats. But with a bit of help from a UBC researcher, Lumi found her way to a new home.
Cats from hoarding environments, they very commonly have a high prevalence of medical and behavioral issues that make treating them in shelters a particular challenge.
For the past few years, Egan has been researching how to rehabilitate cats like Lumi. She developed a protocol that combines anti-anxiety medication and behavioral techniques to make them less fearful of humans. Staff or volunteers administer the medication, then they interact with the cats every day, each time getting closer and closer.
So to get to work on cat research to improve lives of cats directly in shelters that's very applied, that can be used right away, for me that is the ultimate dream.
Shelter cats like this are generally easy to adopt. They like pets and cuddles, and they seek out human attention. Cats that come from hoarding situations aren't always so lucky.
A lot would be euthanized.
Kim Monteith has worked at the BC SPCA for more than 20 years. She says the organization takes in hundreds of cats from hoarding situations each year, and in the past, it didn't always end well.
5 or 10 years ago, good question. Well, we would bring them in and they wouldn't have good outcomes. We couldn't work with them. We didn't have the resources. We didn't know how to help them.
The SPCA has been working with Egan on her research and applying it at the shelter. The results have been noticeable, with more cats adopted out than ever.
This, and I speak for all of our staff and volunteers, has really changed. It's a game changer for us.
Oh, what's that?
A game changer for the shelter and a second chance for cats like Lumi. Marie Zeidler, CBC News, Vancouver.
Yesterday, we introduced you to business owners in the downtown Eastside who are having a tough go. They say the removal of tents in the area hasn't made things any easier. Today, we bring you part 2 of Leanne Young's report, hearing from experts on why problems persist and what changes are needed now.
We're just waiting for a Zoom interview with Dr. Perry Kendall. He is the former provincial health officer here in BC. So he's in Victoria now, he's retired. And we're going to talk to him because, the problems on the downtown east side are increasing. I think everyone would agree on that. But he was there back in 2000 when the City of Vancouver implemented this groundbreaking 4 pillars drug strategy, which included harm reduction. And there's been some criticism, of course, because with those problems increasing. So we want to ask him if he feels like the policy has lived up to its potential, and maybe why not.
Recording in progress.
I wanted to first off get from you, how do you think we're doing in terms of meeting the challenges of the people on the downtown east side?
The number of homeless people on the streets is increasing. The number of people with serious mental illness on top of substance abuse issues is increasing. And the area in which people are living has actually decreased. Gentrification has been gradually encroaching on the downtown east side, the affordable blocks, over the past 20 years as well. So what you have is a larger population of homeless people, more of whom have concurrent disorders, and fewer of whom have a place to actually live inside.
So in your opinion then, what is it that we need to do now? What do governments need to focus on in order to help the business owners who are affected by the many issues plaguing the people living on the downtown east side?
There is no quick, simple, easy fix, okay? Anybody who thinks there is, basically, blowing smoke out of their ass, to be honest and crude. So there's no quick, easy fix. But in the background, we need to ask, can you think of any other policy that is killing British Columbians at the rate of 2,300 a year, right? Which is what our Controlled Drugs and Substances Act and our criminalization of certain drugs does. So we need to have a discussion around Is this really a sane policy or not? I think we should move to a regulated supply, but that's a big political leap. And let's increase our access to mental health care and primary health care, but that's not going to happen overnight either.
Everyone's looking for solutions, and we're about to talk to Kevin Barlow. He's the executive director of the Hastings Cross Business Improvement Association, which basically oversees the entire East Hastings Strip, as well as the 1 or 2 blocks north and south of it, including Linda's business and Ross's business. And he's pushing for solutions now. He's been working with vulnerable populations his entire career, so let's go have a chat. And so as the guy who's trying to advocate for essentially probably the toughest business neighborhood in maybe all of North America, what do you tell policymakers? Like, what do these businesses need in order to try and actually, cut it? It's tough out there.
Yeah, I think one of the things we don't really understand is that even those people that are homeless are contributing to the local economy here. So they'll go into corner stores and buy cigarettes or coffee, that type of thing, I really believe that tiny homes, and there's other alternatives like retrofitting buses, and you can put them into either a parkette, like close off a block, put a couple buses there, and then you can house 20 people. They're away from buildings. I just think the city is not open enough to looking at those things, because they're trying to create this smoke and mirrors where they're saying, okay, we've chased everybody out, now let's get back to normal.
In talking to the businesses here, there are a lot of worries, there's a lot of fear, but at the same time, there's a lot of hope. People want to be in this community, they want to keep their doors open, and they want to see the community thrive. And the hope is that by speaking out, they'll be able to bring about change, not just for themselves, but for everyone here.
Here is a live shot of Burrard Inlet facing the beautiful North Shore. Up next, we head to the Vancouver Comic Arts Festival. More than 100 comic illustrators were in Vancouver this weekend for the Vancouver Comic Arts Festival, an annual celebration of comics and creators. The two-day event that wrapped up today took place at the Roundhouse Community Centre, and here are some of the highlights.
This is the Vancouver Comic Arts Festival. It's a free, accessible comics event we do every year. This is the first year back to full strength since the pandemic. So it's really bringing exhibitors and creators from all over the world, like internationally, all over Canada, bringing them here and having the public able to meet them, get things signed, buy comics. So we're very dedicated to making sure that we're platforming and letting Indigenous artists speak for themselves, having local communities, queer communities speak for themselves represented. And there's a comic for every age group, for every interest, for every type of person, and there's also the same type of people making them. The throng of people coming in, and just so many amazing people in different communities and people represented. I'm gonna say over the moon. I'm over the moon.
That is your late news for this Sunday. Thank you so much for watching. For news at any hour, visit our website, cbc.ca/bc. Have a great night.